Welcome to the 10th presentation in our series on action learning. We're very pleased that you are joining us. This presentation is about actions for progress in learning and action learning. I'm Carter McNamara of Authenticity Consulting. We're providing this series to make action learning even more available and more accessible to everyone. This presentation is one in a series and they are best viewed in order, so please be sure to visit the website listed below for more information on the complete series as well as more information about our company. And so now, let's get started. By now, you should have a good understanding of the overall action learning process, including projects, membership, groups, facilitation, and coaching. So now we'll review the role of actions in action learning and what makes for the best types of actions for members to take and learn. We'll give examples of poor actions that don't tend to make much progress on projects and that rarely generate much learning. And then we'll give examples of very useful actions as well. We'll close with suggestions about a hallmark of action learning, how to learn from actions. There are numerous benefits to taking actions in action learning, including that actions, they create experiences for learning. Adults tend to learn best when they actually experience something, and especially when they can reflect on those experiences. Another benefit is that actions verify assumptions and plans. For example, it's common that we develop plans to get things done by a certain time, but then we soon find that our plans were much too optimistic. We find that we needed much more time to get those things done. And actions help cultivate courage. It's easy for us to say that we're going to do something without having had to actually do it. There's risks involved in taking actions, but we have to take them if we're going to develop skills and capabilities. So the role of actions is to help us become more comfortable in doing something to make change rather than merely talking about it. And actions, they shake loose situations. Many times we find that even though we don't have a perfect solution for something, it helps just to do something. Those actions sometimes cause changes in the situation, and that helps us to see the overall situation more differently. And they ensure accountability. We can't grow and develop unless we take ownership and responsibility for ourselves, especially for our actions. Action learning helps us to do that. And finally, sometimes an unrecognized benefit of action learning is that they help group members to remember what each member worked on in the previous meeting. For example, in a meeting in January, if Bob says he's going to meet his boss in the next meeting, then in the February meeting, when Bob mentions that he was going to talk to his boss, suddenly all the members of the group now in February remember everything that Bob talked about in the previous January meeting. By the way, a member might come to the next meeting not having taken the action. That's fine, as long as the member reports what he was going to do, that he didn't do it, and why he didn't do it. And ideally, he also reports what he did instead and what he learned from it. For actions to be useful in action learning, they should be the result of the coaching in the meeting that focused on that particular project that produced it. The coaching in meetings is useful to help members to carefully think about their situations and what they're going to do about it. If a presenter selects an action that obviously did not come from the coaching, then he's not likely to be successful in addressing his project. Also, it might be obvious that the presenter was not really listening at all to the coaching. That criteria points to another one, that the action should be directly related to the priority. Even if the coaching seemed to generate a lot of useful questions and insights, the presenter and members should speak up if they notice that the actions really don't contribute towards any progress for that presenter. Another criteria is that a member's action should be selected by the member herself. That ensures that the actions really suit the nature and the needs of that member, including to his schedule. It also ensures the member is continuing to take ownership and accountability for addressing the situation. An action should be relevant and realistic, as we've talked about. During coaching, members should continually be asking, is that relevant? Is that realistic? That helps especially with members who are struggling with time and stress management, because they often seem to be a bit unrealistic in what they can really accomplish in life and work. And another criteria is that the actions must be within the influence of the member. Otherwise, not only are the actions unlikely to ever be taken, they might actually hurt the situation. When the member is trying to do something that is unrealistic, so the member gets even more frustrated, or his boss gets irritated because the member did not show good judgment. And the last criteria, it should produce learning. If the member selects an action that seems too simplistic or too straightforward, then somebody should say something. For example, if a member is struggling to finish a personal career development plan and decides that his action is just merely to adopt someone else's plan, then members should respectfully question the member about how will that really generate learning for you? Action should be specific. Some people suggest the acronym SMART. S means specific, that everyone understands the action. M means measurable, that someone would know if the action was done or not. A means achievable, that the action is even realistic to do. And R, that means relevant. Is the action clearly in regard to the presenter's project? And T means timely, that the action clearly is reasonable to get done within the time that the presenter says it will be done. For example, a SMART action is, before the next group meeting, I'll meet with my boss to get a job description and a list of performance goals for the coming year, and I'll discuss it with you as group members. Sometimes we use what we call the eyes and ears test, that if somebody took an action, you'd see it or you'd hear it. So if they say they're going to think about something, that's not an action. It needs to be SMART. So let's look at some examples of what we call poor actions that don't get much done and don't generate learning. If a member says, "I'll think about that before the next meeting," well, the other member should respond, "Think about what? What will you do with your thoughts? By when?" Or, "I'll talk to my boss." Well, talk to him about what? When? Or, "I'll have to deal with that, I suppose." Deal with what? Will you or won't you? Or here's one we often hear. "Those are really good ideas." Which ones are good ideas? Which one will you address? By when? The next example about talking to my boss, doubling my workload, and all of that, that includes so many actions that they're probably not even realistic to do. People should ask, can you even really do that before the next meeting? The last example of just adopting a job description as your own is indeed specific, but is it an action that the member will really even learn from? So let's look at examples of useful actions that will generate progress and learning. How about if the member says, "I will meet with my boss to share my concerns and I'll report back to you in our meeting in the coming week." Or, "I've learned that I struggle to delegate, so I'm going to delegate a task to my subordinate and report back to you. I'm going to draft a career development plan of 4 to 5 pages and share that with you as well. I will have 2 meetings with my mentor, each an hour long, and I will write down ideas for my future. I'll reflect on your question, that's a great one, and I'll bring a thoughtful answer back to you in our next meeting." Those are actions that people can actually learn from, and the entire group as well. A hallmark of action learning is learning from actions. So let's look more closely at how people can reflect on the actions that they take. It's very useful to ask members questions about their actions, questions to really make them think, to help them learn. For example, what happened as a result of what you did? What did you expect? What was its effect on your project? How did it affect others? Do you have any new insights about yourself or your work? Any new skills you got from your actions? Notice that those questions are not simply answered with yes or no. Notice that the questions end with a question about what was learned, not what did you do, but what did you learn? Thank you for viewing this presentation, and we hope you will go on to the next one. You might benefit from the following resources to add even more detail to our overviews of action learning. The website Action Learning Central references an extensive amount of free resources, including about the action learning process, each of its key elements, examples of action learning programs, and tools for each aspect of action learning. There's even an action learning glossary with definitions for each of the common terms in action learning. Our company, Authenticity Consulting, also is available to answer your questions or to help you in any other way. Our firm does very successful action learning groups around the world and for a wide variety of outcomes and applications. There's also the free management library at managementhelp.org. You can find resources and tools for almost any activity in the workplace, including for many of the activities in action learning. You can find more about each of these 3 resources by going to actionlearningcentral.com/gratis and select the presentation entitled General Resources for Action Learning. Thank you.